And I even think the word perfection sometimes can be a bit of a misleading word, because a lot of times it's not that we care about it being perfect. It's that we're just nervous or we're insecure or whatever. And so we're hiding behind the word perfection when really it's a worthiness thing, or am I good enough? Ultimately, I have to create something so perfect because I want other people to see the value that sometimes I struggle to see myself, and I've gone through this. My clients have gone through this. I think any entrepreneur goes through it because it's a very vulnerable thing to start a business and to put yourself out there in that way. But yeah, I think just understanding that things are not going to be perfect all the time. And not only is that okay, but that's good. It's good to relieve yourself of this pressure of everything being absolutely perfect, because it's unnecessary. And a lot of times, the things that you're stressing over, your clients will never even know.
You're listening to the Black to Business podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Black to Business podcast. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall, and today we are helping you oil your engines and prepare for growth. We're discussing building the winning team. So when I think about teamwork, I'm taken back to my school days when we were put into groups to accomplish assignments. How we structure and manage the teams we were in often determined the end results of our project. As much as the team leader was important, the roles that we each played were the main pillars of the team. And this is exactly what building the winning team is all about. As entrepreneurs, expansion and growth are the ultimate goals, which comes with many delegations and structural changes, leading to the big question, how do I put together the right team to achieve this? Today, our guest breaks this down for us, pointing out that there is a trial and error to the process. In this episode, we unpack the foundations of building your team, breaking down how to prepare to get the new hire, and most importantly, how to ultimately manage the team to meet your vision and goals for your business. Our guest today is Tatiana O'Hara, agency and team operations coach, or as I would call her, the team management whisperer. Let's get right into it. So Tatiana, welcome to the Black to Business podcast. We're excited to have you here, so welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited as well.
Of course. So today we're talking about one of my favorite topics I think is not talked about enough. And I know you're the expert in this industry. So we're talking about building the winning team. So I'm excited. But before we hop into the conversation, if you could just let my listeners know a little bit about who you are, what is it that you do in your business, and how did you get where you are today?
Yes. So my name is Tatiana, and I'm an agency and team operations coach. I got my start in corporate a couple years ago. After graduating college, I went on to be a district manager, just basically working in corporate operations for a popular grocery chain. So I was managing 5 really high sales volume stores and, the teams within each store. So essentially, my role was making sure that the stores were hitting their KPIs and that the stores looked great. The customers were having a great experience. And the way that I had to do that was by really learning how to lead my team and teaching them how to lead their teams. Because if not, we were all kind of just doing each other's job and nothing was really working the way that it should. The numbers would be down and turnover would be high and all of those things. So after doing that for about 4 years, I knew that I always wanted to get into coaching, but I thought I just wanted to teach people how to start a business. But I really love the team stuff so much that I basically, decided to start teaching people that online, because I realized my store managers are really no different than entrepreneurs online. If they learn how to properly lead and manage their team, then the operation can flow much smoother and just open up the door for more profit and just more joy in business. So now I work with online business owners who either run agencies or they're coaches or they sell a product, and really help them strategically build their teams.
I love it. And I know you work with people typically who already have a team. Some of our audience members are building their team or they're just getting started, but we want to help them get to the point where they can have a team and be prepared. So I want to talk about what you feel that makes a great business team.
Okay, awesome. That's a loaded question. I think a lot, honestly. I think the very first thing is streamlined operations. I think a lot of us jump right into hiring people because we recognize that we're overwhelmed or we are, doing all of the work. When in reality, a lot of that could be remedied by just having streamlined operations, like having a very set and specific way that you serve your clients or your customers, having that outlined in the onboarding process. Not bending over backwards for everyone and reinventing the wheel for every client that we have. If we can just kind of streamline the way that we do things and, create processes around them, that's going to really set you up to be able to lead your team that much better. And then I think the second part of it is being clear on who you actually need to hire on your team and not just hiring impulsive hires or everyone else is hiring a VA, so you think you need a VA, and then you get them and you have no idea what to do with them. So just really having strategy behind the people that you're bringing onto the team.
That is so true, because I feel like everyone is, you get to a place where you're feeling like overwhelmed. So you're like, I need some help. And then you get to the point where you have that VA and you don't know what to give them. Then you become frustrated. So then it's a whole mess. So I agree. And I want to kind of dive into people understanding when they need to hire. And also, I guess I want to talk about knowing your leadership style before you're hiring. Mm-hmm. So what advice? Yeah.
Okay. So like identifying who you need to hire or knowing when it's time to hire. There's a couple ways that you can know that it's time to hire. Your business will literally tell you. You're either overwhelmed, you're overbooked. A lot of us are, keeping people on a wait list. What it can also look like is just kind of reaching that point of like creative burnout, like some of the joy from your business has left. And then there are also proactive ways to know that it's time to hire, like not waiting until it's happening. And that might look like wanting to expand into an area of business that you're not necessarily familiar with, like ads, paid advertisements. Yes, you could go learn how to run ads, but you also could hire an expert onto your team who can run ads for you. And then, when it comes to deciding who that person should be, a lot of times it's just looking at what am I doing every day in the business? What are the tasks that I'm doing over and over and over again that I don't need to be doing? And looking at this giant list, I actually have a free resource. It's called my task matrix on my website that really helps you dissect everything that you're doing day to day in the business. And then you can categorize it and be able to look at it from a bird's eye view and easily identify like, okay, based on this, it looks like I really need support in marketing, or I really need support with someone to edit my podcast for me. And then you can kind of make that strategic hire, that way.
Love it. And so what are your thoughts on, people choosing to hire someone full-time, part-time versus just getting a contractor?
Mm-hmm. So I think most people, I'd say 95% of entrepreneurs are likely going to be hiring contractors for a good while. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with contractors. I think there's a time and a place for them. And I think there are some roles that may be contracted forever, right? Like you may always have your video editor be a contractor. You may never bring them in-house full time. But when it's like, when you're trying to decide between the two, I think the biggest thing for me, like I have a team of contractors now and I have one going to full time in the next 30 days. And ultimately my decision to move her from contractor to full time was me saying, okay, I'm very invested in this person. She's very invested in me. And I really want to take her the distance with me, but I also need more commitment. I need more of her time. And, as a contractor, you can't necessarily do some of those things, right? And so it was realizing right now she's my marketing coordinator, but in the future, I want her to be my director of marketing. And so I'm going to bring her on full time and pay her a salary and, work out some benefits and that kind of thing so that we can really start progressing towards, the goals that we have. But she also knows that I'm just as invested in her.
Yes. And I think that's so important that you mentioned that, because it's like you're bringing her along the journey and you're investing in her. So it makes her feel like she wants to be a part of the team. So, yes. And I think that speaks to also creating, I know one of the things you talk about a lot is creating standard operating procedures and just having those systems in place. So what advice do you have for people who are looking to hire and they're doing everything themselves, but they're not organized and, getting into the habit of creating these operating procedures so when they're ready to hire someone and why it matters?
Okay. So a lot of times when people are telling you that you need SOPs, they're telling you to document all your processes so that when you hire someone, it's just going to be easier for them. I don't think that's the way to go.
Oh,
I do to an extent, but a lot of times we are so focused on writing out the steps of a process that doesn't even work, writing out the steps of a process that's extremely inefficient, right? And so I think first it's about taking a step back from the business and analyzing, like, what are the top 5 repeating issues that we have in the business on a weekly, a daily, a monthly basis? And what are the processes surrounding those top 5 issues? Let's go through and clean those up and figure out what is the gap. A lot of times you have the process written out, but you're skipping a lot of steps. Like I've seen SOPs written out in the past where maybe the process is like the client, the whole client fulfillment process. And we'll go from saying, have sales call, send invoice, send contract, and then we'll say onboard client and then start phase 1 of the project. But it's like, well, what was the onboarding process? Like, we didn't document that, right? Like, we completely skipped it. So a lot of times we're summarizing steps in our SOPs, and that's what's really slowing us down because there are gaps there. So that's the first thing, right? Is cleaning up the actual processes, but then don't try to document everything at once. Naturally, when we're documenting a process, because it's not the most fun thing to do, our brain goes to documenting the really easy stuff. Like, oh, this is how you make a post on Facebook. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. I want you to focus on documenting the 20% of tasks that make up 80% of the actual revenue. Like, what are the tasks that are closest to the money? Because everything else you and your team can figure out. Chances are they can, recreate the process, improve the process, whatever. But the processes that are closest to the money are the ones that truly matter.
That's so interesting you said that, because even with my team, we're going through and documenting the processes and we're figuring out we didn't even write that part of it and who's going to do that, or I'm supposed to do that and I didn't even know that. So that's true. But I guess it's actually when you get into doing the work, like you said, it makes more sense. So
yeah. So one of the things that I do with my clients in my VIP days is we go through their entire client process from the sales call all the way to the offboarding, and they'll be telling me the steps. And I'm like, okay, well, what do we do in this step? Well, what do we do in this step? Okay, this is the first step of this step, but what do we do here? And they're just, eventually they kind of get frustrated. They're like, Tatiana, how much more detail can we go into? But it's like, if you don't know every single step of the process, then you can't delegate every single step of the process. And if every step of the process isn't assigned to a body, then things will get missed. For example, we'll have a project management tool or an automation tool or something. And we'll say, the automation is going to take care of this part of the process. Okay, well, who's managing that software to ensure that the automation actually happened? You know what I mean? So it's really about making sure you don't leave a single gap. And when we fill the gaps, that's when we just start really working like a well-oiled machine.
Yes. Well, this also raises the question as far as when you're hiring and delegating, especially for people who are doing freelancers or they're hiring virtual assistants. Would you advise hiring someone who is skilled, or I'll say an expert, or someone who is having the ability to learn? Especially I'm thinking about when it comes to creating these processes.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important that everyone has at least one person on their team that's extremely analytical and detail focused and, kind of finds joy in the processes and the systems. I see a lot of people like outsource it once, right? So they'll hire someone to set up their, ClickUp, Asana, Trello, Basecamp, whatever like project management tool you use. They'll hire someone one time to come in and do that setup, but then it's like nobody on the team is well versed to be able to manage it ongoing, and then it quickly becomes just as inefficient. And it's the same with SOPs. Like you can hire someone to write out all your SOPs one time, but who's doing it on an ongoing basis? I'm not sure what tool you use, but on my team we use ClickUp. And oh, good! It's the best. It's the best one. But every week on Mondays, so Mondays are like my days where I don't work with clients and I'm just working specifically on, I guess, back end and business development related things. But every Monday I go in and I'm reviewing what happened in the past week and I'm adding to the list of SOPs to create for my assistant. And then if there's a part of the SOP that I have, like, for example, we're doing client retreats now and we're creating a SOP for how to plan the entire retreat so that we can duplicate it every quarter when we host it. There were certain things that only I had, right? Like I had the agenda to the retreat. I have the contact for the guest speakers that we book. And so it's like in that task, I'll give her the stuff that I have, but then I'm like, hey, I need you to go in and create an SOP for how we plan out this entire retreat. So it's like an ongoing thing. And that's the beauty of having someone on your team who can do that, is like, all I have to do is know what process I need documented and someone on my.
Yes, I love ClickUp. I stand by it. It's so just like everything you can imagine you can do on there. It's just easy all in one place.
It's amazing.
Yes. So, okay. So we talked about, like not having this SOP or this all written down when someone comes on the team. So what is your advice? Because it is about building a winning team for people who are looking to hire, to have prepared to bring on people. So what should the onboarding process look like?
Yeah. So onboarding is definitely more than just getting someone the passwords that they need. I think a lot of times that's what we think it is. Like, okay, here's access to this, here's access to that, here's your to-do list, go for it. But the onboarding process can take a couple weeks, just general advice would be, one, definitely get them all of the information and resources that they need to be successful. I like to create a full onboarding dashboard in my project management tool or whatever it is that you guys use, so that the hire has a base, I guess, to work off of. And then I kind of like to break it down by day or by week to show them what they should be reviewing in that time. So for the first day, I definitely like to have a meeting. So I schedule a meeting between the two of us and we definitely go through their job description again. I think that's always a good thing to review. And then we're going through my expectations and then they're telling me their expectations for the role. We're talking about the way that we each communicate, not just we're going to communicate through Slack, but how do you like to be led? And, this is kind of the environment or the culture that you can expect here at this company. We go through core values and really not only just sharing the words of the core value, but really explaining to them what they mean to us and how we practice them on a daily basis, to just go ahead and really, create buy-in around those things. It's also cool to have a welcome gift for them if you'd like. I love to learn as much as I can or as much as they're, willing to share about, them and their lives so that I can kind of, keep up with those things. For example, one of my team members bought a dog. And so, we sent her a gift card to a pet store that was near her so that she could get something for her dog. So it's so onboarding is a great opportunity to teach them about the role in the company, but it's also just the time to really connect with them, and to create that, just that connection so that you have something to continue to build off of, because their first couple of weeks are going to be kind of scary, right? It's a new job. It's a lot of new things to learn, a lot of information coming at you at once. And you have to really begin to establish that trust in the beginning so that they know if they're overwhelmed, they actually feel comfortable telling you that, versus randomly quitting on you one day because they don't feel comfortable telling you anything.
Yes, I totally agree. And I agree that it sets the tone for how you're going to, lead. And also it makes a great impression when you have all of those things in place. Like you said, going over the values. Like I know me personally, I have like a presentation that I go through when someone joins the team, just an overview of the company. So I think that really sets the tone of your leadership style and what the organization is about.
Yeah, definitely. You can really dress it up, me personally, I love meeting in person if they're a local team member. Some of my clients make presentations, some make digital, I guess, books that you can flip through. You can really get creative with it and make it an entire experience. And I also think it should speak to the brand that you have. You know what I mean? Like if your brand is all about, let's say you sell candles or something that are, calming scents. If your brand is all about, being calm and tranquility, it's like, what can you do in the onboarding process to make them feel those things and to allow them to experience what it's truly like to not only work there, but even to be a customer of the company. Because you want them to be able to emulate those things when they're interacting with your customers, no matter what their role is, even if they don't interact with customers. But hopefully you get what I'm saying. But just showing them what it's truly like behind the scenes.
Yes. And so I want to talk about one of the things you also speak about a lot is how business owners who are having issues working in the business and not, escaping the grind. Talk a little bit about why you see that happening in your experience on, also business owners who's been doing this for so long by themselves, that issue with letting go and delegating.
Yeah, it's a lot, honestly. The more I work in this industry, the more I understand how deep it goes. But for a lot of people, it's a mindset thing. I don't know that this business is actually going to work. The last couple months, I've made a lot of money, but maybe it's a fluke, right? Like I should just keep doing this myself because if I hire people, then it's real. Then I really have to show up and I really have to do this thing. That could be one of them. Another one is some people experience issues with trust. People have done things in their lives to cause them to struggle with trusting others. And so it's this thought of, I can't let someone in. They're just going to come in and steal everything, or they're just going to come in and, abandon me and leave me at some point. And then I think there's also sometimes this imposter syndrome around the idea of leading. A lot of us, unfortunately, don't have great examples of great leadership from previous jobs. And subconsciously that affects our ability to show up and lead ourselves, right? Because we're like, I don't want to be a bad boss, and I don't know what a good boss looks like. So I'm just going to keep doing this myself. And then I think the last thing is the idea that nobody can do it as well as I can. And sometimes I think that's just an ego check thing, because I totally get it, especially the tasks that are closer to you, like your social media or copywriting or sales. It's like, nobody can beat me. Nobody can have my voice. But one thing I'm learning is that it's very true and possible that somebody won't be able to be as good as you, but they may be better in different ways. Like they may expand your thinking and expand the direction that the business was even previously able to go in, because you're you, right? You live in the business every single day, but to bring someone in with an outside perspective literally can be, it can make a world of difference. We just kind of have to be open to that.
Yes. I totally agree. And I think it's that thing of letting go, but also wanting to have everything perfect. And my thing is, how do you deal with that? I want it this way, but is it worth it to change it? And if that's good enough, because I think sometimes that stifles our growth and wanting to be perfect, but allowing people to learn and do, like you said, in a different way, and understanding that they might get a different reception to it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I even think the word perfection sometimes can be a bit of a misleading word, because a lot of times it's not that we care about it being perfect. It's that we're just nervous or we're insecure or whatever. And so we're hiding behind the word perfection when really it's a worthiness thing, or am I good enough? Ultimately, I have to create something so perfect because I want other people to see the value that sometimes I struggle to see myself, and I've gone through this. My clients have gone through this. I think any entrepreneur goes through it because it's a very vulnerable thing to start a business and to put yourself out there in that way. But yeah, I think like just understanding that things are not going to be perfect all the time. And not only is that okay, but that's good. Like it's good to relieve yourself of this pressure of everything being absolutely perfect. Because it's unnecessary. And a lot of times, like the things that you're stressing over, your clients will never even know. Like I think back to my time in corporate, and I, as a district manager, I also had to do several remodels for our stores. So over the course of 4 years, I closed 6 stores and reopened them within a couple weeks for like a remodel. And I remember, we would be at the store until 2 a.m. the day before the grand opening, just trying to make everything perfect, turning all the cans of green beans so the labels were facing out. And it's like the customers come in and they don't even see it. Like they see the big picture, but they don't see the little details. They just care about getting the product. So it's just releasing this idea that everything has to be perfect and understanding that it won't be, but it can still be really, really, really good. And I think also when you release that I guess, stress point of everything just being perfect, it allows you to see what other options are available, because your definition of perfect or great is probably well and good, but I wonder what someone else's would look like. Like, I wonder what really good looks like to someone else. Like the content that we create now on my social media, I could have never conceptualized that ever in my life. Like I thought I was creative, and then I hired a marketing coordinator and she just knocked my stuff. So yeah.
Letting go. So letting go to grow. And Tatiana, I want to talk about the importance of having a manage. So you have this team, the importance of having a set management style that carries the culture of the company. Any advice on how people can create that and, just make sure that they are leading well and managing?
I think there's so many different ways that you can kind of come at this, right? Is like, what are your core values as a human being, as a person, right? What's important to you as a person? A lot of times those do carry over into our business. So for me, some of my personal core values, I say my top 2, the most important 2 to me, are autonomy and empathy. Autonomy meaning, yes, I think everyone should be able to figure things out on their own, but deeper than that, I want everyone to feel empowered to find their own solutions and empowered to know that they have full control over their outcomes. And that's true in my friendships, in my relationships, and in my business. And then empathy, I think it's really important to be able to connect with people, even if you've never been through what they're going through, and to meet people where they are and to be able to see that. And so because those are 2 core values that I've lived out my entire life, it naturally has created the foundation for who I am as a leader. I'm a very empathetic leader. I connect with my team members very well. Sometimes I understand how they're feeling without them even telling me. And then autonomy. I do my job as their leader to equip them with the tools that they need to be able to find their own solutions. Because a lot of us want our team members to be autonomous, but we haven't set them up to be autonomous. But that's a story for another podcast episode.
We'll have to have that happen.
Right. I would love that. So if I set my team up with the tools to be autonomous, then they can be that. You know what I mean? So really, those are like the 2 biggest things for me as a leader. And then my other core value in life and in business is nothing is an emergency. Nothing is that serious. Nothing is worth crying over. Nothing is worth, missing a family function over in relation to work. Right. And so I show that as a leader as well. If things are going on in the business and we have all these deadlines, then I will sit down and look at all these deadlines and identify which of these are really not even that important. Like, what are we stressing over for no reason? I never want to, intentionally create stress points in the business. So that's it for me. Right. And so for you, it's about sitting down and identifying, like, what are my core values? What's important to me as a person, and not only what is important to me as a person, but like, what are the things that I can do every time? Because if you say honesty is your core value, but you lie to your team sometimes when you are uncomfortable or when you don't want to own up to something, then it's not really your core value. So identifying what are the things that I can do all the time, and then letting that show in the way that you lead your team.
Love that. That reminds me of, I watched one of your lives like a while back, and you mentioned, one of the things you mentioned in one of your lives is about people running their business, creating the business that they want, and not a business based on someone else's model. And I just thought that that was so powerful, because I think it goes with, like the leadership and management style as well. It's like what works for someone else may not work for you based on your core values.
Exactly. And what happens is, again, if your core value is something that you can't do continuously, then it's not really your core value. And so when you go and you emulate someone else's business, eventually the curtain will fall, because it's not your core value. So you can't truly be that or emulate that or do that repeatedly. It goes the same for marketing strategy or for sales strategy, whatever, right? When you're just copy and pasting what others are doing, everyone talks about copying from the perspective of, oh, this is lacking integrity, this isn't good. All of that is true. But beyond that, it's like, you personally won't be able to maintain this long term because it's not yours. It's not meant for you. But when you dig deep and find what is meant for you, like, it's going to be so much more sustainable, enjoyable, and people are going to be able to tell, like, okay, this is really how she runs her team. Like, she's not lying when she says that she's empathetic.
Yes. Love it. So let's talk about checks and balances we can create to help with team management. So as far as like tracking your team, or is what they're doing working, or what are some things that we can do to change? So talk about, how do you do that?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to do that would be creating KPIs, or key performance indicators. And essentially what that will do is give you some really good concrete tools to measure performance, effectiveness, whatever, right? And so think of the KPI less of like related to the person and more related to either the role or the overall like outcome. So an example could be my marketing coordinator. Or no, I'll do my ads manager. So my ads manager, right? When I look at the role of an ads manager, I'm hiring someone because I want them to run ads, obviously. But ultimately, what is the true outcome that I'm looking for? Well, I'm hoping that these ads are going to lead to more enrollment to my program. And so if more enrollment in my program is the mark of success for an ads manager, what metrics would I need to look at to determine if that was happening or not? So one thing I might look at is click rate. One thing I might look at is return on ad spend. And then I may just look at enrollment numbers as a whole. And so I can evaluate those things on a weekly, monthly basis, whatever, and create some sort of system to identify what's good, what's great, what's terrible, right? Maybe great is getting, 4 enrollments a month from ads. Maybe good is 2 enrollments per month from ads, and terrible is 0 enrollments a month from ads. Then I can look at this, I can pull this data every month and evaluate, what was my business like before I brought in an ads manager? Okay, how many are we doing now that I have an ads manager? And just kind of using that as a baseline to, guide the conversation around our effectiveness in this role, and what can we change? What can we do to increase the amount of enrollments that are coming in through ads. But one thing I will say about KPIs is a lot of times, or sometimes, you do have to be, really on top of it, because you may find that the scale that you created is no longer working, or that the KPI that you're tracking isn't really a true reflection of success in that role. But I think it's a really, really, really good place to start.
Great advice. So let's talk about if the performance is not so great. What are some things that you can do to make it better, or even just talking about having to let someone go? When do you know it's time to let someone go?
Right. So as far as making it better, I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, coach them up or coach them out.
No.
Yeah, that's something I learned in my time during corporate, where basically you have team members and you have to, eventually you get to a point where you have to decide, am I going to coach this person up? Is this person showing potential? Am I going to like ride the waves with them? And if we have issues, we're going to work through it. Or is this person showing clear signs that they're not a good fit? And, you know, we would need to go in a different direction. And so coaching them up might look like, okay, you know, we're hitting our KPI for 3 months in a row, and then now we're consistently declining. A lot of times it's just sitting down and having that conversation. But that's the beauty of KPIs, is that it takes the emotion out of it and it takes the guesswork out of it. I don't know if you've ever worked in a job where like you sat down for your review and your boss told you like they didn't feel like you were doing a good job. And you're like, well, what do you mean I'm not doing a good job? Like, what am I not doing right? And they're like, well, you know, sometimes you just don't do this. And it's like, there's no concrete evidence of anything. KPIs leave a really good paper trail, and it's both empowering and a tool for, you know, development. And so it's clearly, you know, sitting down and talking through the metrics that we've had in the past couple of weeks and giving them the opportunity to communicate with you about it. Right. It may not be that the ads manager is doing anything wrong. I know Facebook just recently updated their API, whatever thing, and it's been like really messing with a lot of people's ad performance. And so maybe it's just a really good, you know, tool for you to guide a conversation and to come up with the solution together. But as far as like when it's time to let someone go, or what I like to say is when the relationship is no longer an asset and it's becoming a liability, it's simply about, again, having that paper trail and having documented conversations, I think is a big thing too. A lot of us have team members that we feel aren't performing and we're just talking to our friends about it. Or even worse, we're talking to other team members about it and we're not talking to them. And then one day we decide to fire them and then they feel blindsided. So it's about having those performance conversations and creating a plan for improvement together, working through that together. And then, you know, after however many times you see fit, after 3 conversations, after 60 days of working through it together, if you're not seeing an improvement, then yeah, it may be time to let them go. And the one thing I want to say about firing is I think it gets a bad rap. I think it feels like this really negative thing. And it is, right? We're severing a relationship and that person no longer has the financial security of working with you. But if you do it right, if you do all the steps leading up to the right way, letting someone go is one of the best decisions you could ever make, because one, it's going to free you to find the person who's actually right for that role, but it's also going to free them to find the role that's right for them. When you're holding on to a team member that needs to be fired, it's a strain for both of you. They hate it. They feel like nothing is working. You hate it. You feel like nothing is working. So when you have the proper conversation ahead of time and they felt supported from you the entire time, it's a good thing. And I think we should, you know, change our mindset around it.
I totally agree. It's like, you know, this is coming, or, you know, we've been pretty transparent. I really believe in transparency as well. So how often do you recommend people have these performance conversations?
So big picture performance conversations, I think, depending on the size of your organization, assuming everyone is running a smaller business, I think quarterly is perfectly fine, even monthly if you'd like. But that's for like the big picture, like review. But we should be having daily conversations, weekly conversations with our team members, right? Like in our weekly meetings or however often you decide to meet with your team, we should be having conversations around the performance for that project that we just did, or, you know, reviewing the tasks that they've completed in the last week, whatever that may look like for the individual role. But like big picture reviews, I think they're more impactful when there is time in between each one to give them time to improve. But the big thing is, it's not just about the performance reviews. It's about the daily communication and how we're leading them in between.
Agreed. Now, one of the things you mentioned before is about people not wanting to hire because sometimes they feel like it won't work. But also, I think a lot of things is people thinking that they cannot afford to hire. I want to talk about the cost implications of hiring and how to go best about it for a small business owner. Either it's preparation or it's like, okay, you can't afford to hire if.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So this is a big one for a lot of people. It's like, okay, I want a team, but can I actually afford this? So first thing I'll say is I am not a financial expert, and I definitely recommend having someone on your team that is financially, savvy. I have a CFO. But before that, I had a money manager when my budget was a little bit, lower when I was in the beginning stages of my business. You could also work with just an accountant. The person who does your taxes, you could even just, refer to here and there. But I definitely recommend getting some sort of like go ahead. Excuse me. Sorry. I definitely recommend getting some sort of go ahead from a financial expert, because just because you made a lot of money one month does not mean that you can sustain that. You know what I mean? So then once you've discussed it with them, the general advice that I typically give, and the general advice that my CFO has approved me to give, is typically your payroll budget initially is going to be about 30% of your revenue coming in. So if you're making $10,000 a month on a regular basis, generally about $3,000 a month is going to be designated for a team. Now, that does not mean that you go out and spend $3,000 a month on one person, unless that's, the most impactful thing that you can do, but, kind of spreading it out amongst the different roles that you may need to hire. And then me personally, like once we move up a notch in our revenue, once we sustain that amount for, I'd say at least a quarter, then we'll kind of make, new hiring decisions based on that new number and decide to either increase the hours of the people on our team or make a new hire.
Love it. So Tatiana, I want to talk about your program that you have, Grindaholics Anonymous.
Yes.
What is that about? And first of all, I love the name.
Thank you.
It's like, oh my God, I'm a grinder. I'm trying to get out of this, but this is help. So tell me about the program.
Okay, so humble opinion, Grindaholics Anonymous is the best program on the market for entrepreneurs who want to grow a sustainable business with an efficient team by their side. So Grindaholics Anonymous is a 6-month group coaching program where we essentially take you A to Z through cleaning up the inside of your business, building your dream team, and learning how to run your team day to day. So the first thing we do is get really clear on your overall vision. I think the world of entrepreneurship has tricked us into believing that your vision is just knowing how much money you want to make, but it really goes so much further than that. It's about the quality of life that you want and the individual features of your personal life and all of those things. So we get really clear on that so that we can build your business around that, versus what a lot of us are doing is finding our dream clients and then building our business or building our life around our business. So once we're clear on the vision, then we go through your offers. So we go through the things that you're selling to your clients, and we refine the processes and we tweak it and we fill in all those gaps that we were talking about earlier, so that it's cleaner, right? You're not bringing people into a mess. Then once we've done that, we audit what is it that you're doing every single day in the business. And we take that information and we build out your full organizational structure. So, those fancy org charts that you see at the big companies, we build that for you according to the vision that you have. So if your vision is to run a $2 million company, then we're building out the org chart that's going to support a $2 million company. Then we take you through the full hiring process. So you learn how to actually hire. You become a Tatiana. So you learn how to create a really good job description. You learn how to, get applications, sort through them, interview, send the offer, negotiate, the whole thing. Then we teach you how to train them, how to onboard them, and how to work with them day in and day out. So yeah, it's honestly very, very transformational. I think the wins that the people in the program have are kind of all over the place. Some of them have doubled their revenue because they were able to increase their capacity. Some of them are working 20 hours less per month. Some of them have hired 8 people, and some of them have all of them actually just talk about the massive shifts that they've had in their mindset and how they actually feel like the CEO of their business now and not just the employee of their business. So it's great. I love it. It's the only thing I do right now. It's my main focus. And I love being able to serve my clients.
Yes, I love it. And I love the fact that you have a simple and impactful model. I think that's one of the things I really encourage people to have, that model. Like you said, this is the only thing you do, and it's been able to give you a good life. So I think that's commendable.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. And is the program open now?
Yes. So it is evergreen or open enrollment, however you want to say it. People are able to enroll at any time, just because the nature of my ideal client is hurting now. And so they don't have time to wait until my next launch. They're like, I need to fix this today. It's not uncommon for someone to share something that I posted on social media, and then they find me and they're like, oh my God, when can I start? And I'm like, you can get on the coaching call today. Let's go. So, yeah.
I love that. And I want to ask you, looking back, what is the best risk that you've taken for your business?
Ooh, best risk. Honestly, starting Grindaholics Anonymous. So last year, all I did was VIP days. So I would basically work with a person for about 6 to 7 hours and really help them do this whole transformation in one day. I did about 40 of those, and I loved it, but I was starting to get a little burned out because I was building my team, but there wasn't a whole lot that I could delegate outside of admin and social media. And so now I have taken what I was teaching in one day that got transformation for a lot of people, but for those with smaller teams that really didn't have the manpower to implement, I think it was a little overwhelming. And so I basically took that VIP Day curriculum and turned it into a program. And so now I'm able to serve multiple people at one time. And it has completely changed my entire life. Instead of being on, 3 or 4, 6 to 8 hour calls per week, now I'm on one coaching call per week. And I'm able to honestly serve my clients better because they're in community with people going through the exact same thing, and they can really lean on each other too. So it's definitely positioning me to be able to really have a life outside of business. Me and my boyfriend plan to get married this year and hopefully have kids next year. So it's we're laying the foundation now for us to be able to have that life, which honestly goes back to that vision that I was talking about. I want to make a lot of money, yes, but more than anything, I want to be at home with my kids. I'm creating the structure of my business now to be able to, create that for myself.
And it's so great that you mentioned that, because I also remember for that live I watched that you said that one of the things you had to realize for yourself is that you weren't prepared to make money, a large sum of money, I forget the number, because you knew the work that it would require, and you were not at that space then because there were other things that you wanted in your life, like spending time with your family and, preparing to have a family. Something along those lines, I remember you saying.
Yeah. So my goal for this year was to make $1 million. And I ended up cutting that in half because I realized that I could do it. I can 1,000% make $1 million this year. There were a couple months where we were on track to do that, right? But in hindsight, those were some of the months where I was just miserable. I was working so much and my brain was in overdrive and I didn't have time for the things that I loved. And so when I cut that goal almost in half, I'm still having a great quality of life. You know what I mean? I'm able to pay myself what I want to pay myself. I have a team of 6 people now that they're all paid very well. And I can be done working at 3:00 every day if I want to. And it's I decided that meant more to me than hitting the oh so sought after $1 million a year. But I also realized that the million wasn't my vision. It was someone else's. And so it was waking up and realizing that I was just trying to keep up with the Joneses online. Everybody else around, all my other friends around me, right? They're all shooting for $1 million this year. So I'm I should do that too. But it was just realizing that I'm running my own race and I have to be able to make it to the end. So yeah.
Love it. And so off of that, what advice would you give to someone in their first year of business?
Ooh, that's a good one. So I would definitely say that don't get caught up in the money yet. I know that's easier said than done, because if you're in your first year, then you're trying to replace your salary so that you don't have to go back to work. But I promise, if you put the emphasis on getting really clear on what you want to do, who you want to serve, and how you want to serve them, like it's going to put you light years ahead of your peers. Because most of the clients that I'm working with are at the point where they're making $1 million and they're like, I hate this. And now they're trying to go back to the drawing board, but they can't because they've already committed to paying 5 full-time salaries and they've already bought, you know, an $800,000 house somewhere. Right. And so it's like, you have the opportunity now to really do it the right way and focus on the things that nobody else is focusing on, so that when you do grow, and your growth may be slower when you do it this way, right? You may not hit 6 figures your first year and then $1 million your second year, like you see a lot of people doing online, but it's going to last you so much longer and you're going to experience so much more joy while you're doing it.
Love it. So Tatiana, any resources, tools that have been very helpful in your business that you can't live without, and some of the books that you've read that have really helped you in your...
Yes. Okay. So tools that I can't live without. So I do a guided meditation every morning with Alexa. And then what else? As far as books, I think Atomic Habits was a really good one for me. Just learning how to create habits that you actually stick to, because I get very sidetracked very quickly. And then other than that, I would just say, like, this is going to sound silly, but having apps on your phone that are just like mind stimulating games. Anytime I open my phone, I immediately go to Instagram. It's almost like scary. Like sometimes I'll open my phone to do something, but then I'm on Instagram and I'm like, wait, what did I open my phone for? And then I remember what I was actually supposed to be doing. So it's second nature to immediately jump back into the world of social media, but like we have to give our brain time to disconnect. And so I like Sudoku puzzles. I like the games where you're like Candy Crush type games and stuff. Just things to like stimulate your mind that don't have to do with seeing what everyone else is doing online, I think would be like a little hidden gem for you.
Yes. And Tatiana, what does it mean for you to be Black in business?
Ooh, I love this question. I think for me, it just means like doing exactly what I said I was going to do, regardless of what anybody tells me I can do. Serving the people that I want to serve, you know, achieving the goals that I want to achieve. I try to pay, you know, very little attention to any statistic that's telling me that Black businesses fail or that Black people don't, you know, have the same amount of wealth as other races, because those things are they may be true, right? But like, I think the more that I process that information, the more that it subconsciously affects me. And so I just choose to wake up every day and to go out and do it and to create the opportunity and to, you know, just achieve my goals, right? Like literally nothing can stand in between me and my goals unless I allow it to. That's honestly my mentality.
Drops mic. That is so powerful. I felt it. And I'm like, just get up and do what you want to do. Love it. Right. Love it. So how can people connect with you, support you? Yes.
Yeah. So definitely social media. I'm on Instagram often. So @ Tatiana O'Hara. I'm very social. I love sending voice notes. So if you DM me, I'll probably voice note you back. And other than that, I mean, I would definitely say, you know, just check out my website and learn more about my program, my services. I have a free training on there that you can apply to get access to. And that's a really good way to just not only learn about me, but also learn about the process of building a team and what that could really look like for you.
Love it. So Tatiana, this has been such a great pleasure having you on the show. I can't wait to have you back, but I've really learned so much about building a winning team. So thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So until next time, everyone. Listen, team building is about more than just having people do stuff. The way your team is set up translates into efficiency and success. Tatiana has given us a blueprint for creating teams built on trust and the common objective of collaboration and meeting the ultimate business vision. Throughout the conversation, we unpack the importance of streamlining your operations, understanding your leadership style in order to build the right team for you. And we had the tough conversation on when and how to let go of an employee or a contractor. There are many elements to building a team that it may seem hard to let go and stop the micromanaging in the beginning. However, in the end, we have to trust the process. Remember, you are only as good as those around you. You do not need to do everything by yourself. Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to check out blacktobusiness.com/61 for complete show notes and resources mentioned during this episode. We would also be so grateful if you could rate and review this episode and our show to let us know how helpful this has been for you. See you next time, family. Same time next week.